I think belonging to me feels like this maybe not over, but just this undergirding to this whole question. And I really want to come back to masculinity in this. And, you know, in my own fumbling and stumbling and trying to understand this way, you know, trying to figure out how it is that I can have that sensuous engagement with the world. And at the fundamental of that is the belonging, fundamental belonging that this earth reflects me and holds me. Right. When we have that disconnection from that, we can't learn from it, you know. And when I come to the question of masculinity, there's so many teachers out here, you know, on all sides, all, you know, I think of Jordan Peterson, like there's times when I would like appreciate the 12 rules. I'm like, yeah, okay, you know, some of those things like support me in my own flailing. And there's, you know, all these elders that carry that. And I think something that I have to push myself to do time and time again is come back to the landscape and to have the landscape teach me and all the kin that are there. And looking, when you have that sense of belongingness, this place is not mine, but I belong here. Like this is, it's me and I'm it, and we can reflect each other. And then all of a sudden the questions that come in your life, what does it mean to be a man? What am I doing with my life? What's my next phase? What's my purpose? All those things. Suddenly the landscape starts just reflecting that back to you. And the alphabetic mind doesn't know how to do that, right? It doesn't know how to move away from the abstract internal rational, which I'm existing in way too much, obviously, but it doesn't know how to come back to that. And this is where I think those stories, the basis of all myth is an animate relationship with the landscape. You know, this is Sophie Strand's work, this rewilding of all this mythology and reconnecting us to these stories. Those stories come from beings on the land. That's where they come from. And so when I think about masculinity and that sense of belonging in the context of our identities or those technologies of identity that shape us and we live out into, we can learn that from the land. And to me, I think one of the two that penetrate and surround me constantly and are such a big part of my thinking are the tricksters, coyote, you know, and the death carriers, vulture, the ashdezi, right? It's because in that the vulture or the trickster reflects back to us our adaptability. It's our ability to look. The coyote is always going out and saying, oh, that's the way that skunk does it. I'm going to copy skunk. Oh, this is the way that the fireflies care for the fire. I'm going to go try to care for the fire, but I burn my tail in the process. You know, it's the tricksters are always learning and adapting and looking at how every bit of life does things and trying it on. And that is something that our thumbs, our bodies as human beings, we do. We reflect the world and we learn from it. We learn how to feed ourselves by watching other animals feed themselves. Right. So this archetype of the trickster is so integral to how I move through. And I think as men, we have to look out at the world and say, what are new ways of being masculine in the world? What are new ways of being, period, that can be held and contained in the masculine identity? And the vultures, those that clear up, the carrion eaters, the ones that take death and create life with it, right? Those two are the grief dealers. Those are the ones that know you must grieve death because death is the thing. I get really scared when I start thinking about us as human beings continuing our life, you know, becoming immortal or pushing it years and years and years and years and years on, because we might forget that fear of the grief, you know, run away from that. And what do we lose in that? So I guess I just wanted to bring all of that in, that belonging piece is the foundation that allows us to be reflected by our landscapes, right? And for us to see new ways of being. And coyote and trickster myths to me are some of the best because trickster carry fire, they carry knowledge. They're the fire stealers often. They're the world creators through accident, through mischievousness, right? And we're in a place of chaos where the heroic endeavor is not going to carry us. We have to be adaptable. We have to be mischievous. We have to look at everybody else and all other beings and say, what do you have to teach us so that we can tend this land, tend this earth, tend this steward the earth better.
in the uhane, or in the internal masculine. And I just want to preface, because I see some lovely gendered sisters, regardless of my gender, I am 100% masculine and I'm 100% feminine. So we have a saying in our uhane in the masculine, and that is pa vale pu'uvai. And this could be felt as the mantra of the internal masculine. And pa vale pu'uvai means open your heart wider. And so can you keep that heart open? And I love that Téo is bringing in the trickster, because the trickster energy is also how we're challenged. Can we persevere through challenge, or do we shut down? Do we shut that heart? This also denotes that confidence of our internal masculine. And so ensuring that we pa vale pu'uvai, that heart remains completely open. And, you know, there's that saying, right? There's the saying that, oh, bring it on, bring it on. I don't say that. I don't subscribe to that. I don't find that phrase interesting. What I say is bring it through. Bring it through. I'm not fazed by the challenges. I persevere through the challenges. That institutes that willpower that's so important. And it's also our greatest gift to patriarchy right now. One of the unfortunate things about patriarchy, toxic masculinity, is that for some reason, it's not allowed to ask for help. Because asking for help somehow suggests inadequacy and insufficiency. And I understand that's not malicious, because for me, anytime in my life that I felt inadequate or insufficient, it also made me feel like, okay, this means I'm unlovable. And so I don't ask for help. And so allowing ourselves to be positioned in the challenges, to persevere through the challenges so that we can build that confidence, which is so important. And pa vale pu'uvai, maintain that heart wide open so that we can constantly be that channel. And just like I was sharing with the aina, and being that rhythm with the aina, to be that conduit without shutting down, without the two aspects. There's really two aspects. One is we have too much output, right? In masculinity, there might be too much output, and output will always lead to depletion. For me, when I've gone into depletion, I've gone into resentment and bitterness. And this is why toxic masculinity can be so belligerent and so hostile. And it's great to have intellect. I love intellect, because intellect means objective thinking, but intellect can also be sterile and cold. I have an objective, get out of my way. Whatever the cost is, I'm going to get to my objective. And so we get to pull in our unhipili, our feminine, which is that intuition, so that it remains fair. That's why the feminine governs community, because it's always fair. That's what delegation is all about. Fairness. If there's too much input, right? If we're receiving too much input, and we live in a world of academia, which is there's a lot of data. There's a lot of data. And so if there's too much input, it turns into hoarding. The unfortunate thing about hoarding is that at some point it's going to implode. It's going to implode, and the implosion leads to confusion. Whoa, what's really mine? What is really my essence, my knowing? Am I really using my tools, resourcing my tools, or am I in imitation culture? The other word for imitation culture is fraud culture. Fraud culture. And so we can feel this sense of belonging, right? Okay, the exterior conditions, they're going to tell me that there's why I belong, right? There are four approved personalities that the external conditions likes to tell us. You got to fall into one of these four. The last time I checked, there's 8 billion people on this planet, which means there are 8 billion approved personalities. Why do you belong? And so we would always say, my kupuna, my elders would always say, show up and speak.